Okay, so this video is for my 6th and 7th period. This is pretty much for the most part where I left off with you guys in class. So here I'm going to go over with you everything else that we were not able to cover in class. So this is going to help prepare you for next class. And when we go over the answers to the questions, and then you also have to take your assessment. So here we go. Backtracking a little bit for 7th period, but this stanza says, let me just read the poem first. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returneth, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow find us further than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. So, what are we saying here in stanza 4? Well, I want to bring your attention to the word stout. You should find down in the footnotes that stout means determined and brave. So we're already using the poem's already using the word brave here. So I'm going to write the word determined up at the top. Okay. And here it's saying art is long and time is fleeting. Well, when we're talking about life, I understand the concept that time is fleeting, time is passing, time is not on our side, but the concept of art is long. How does that tie into life? That's what I don't understand. And that's what I want to dissect a little bit more and think about is how could art, and it being long, what could art represent for life? Well, maybe you could look at that art is life itself. Okay, that life is a masterpiece. Life is your own piece of art, and that it can be long. Okay, it takes a long time to develop art. Okay, so art could equal life itself. It could equal life itself. It also you could look at art as, being your accomplishments or being the tasks that you do in life. And that takes a long time too. So this could be the tasks of life or accomplishments. Okay, the tasks or the accomplishments. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So in saying that art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, though determined and brave, they're still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. So even though like in the grand scheme of life, we want to accomplish things and we want to go through life, but it's a long process, and time is not always on our side. We're eventually going to grow older. We're eventually, going to start aging. And even though inside, we might be young, our hearts might be determined and brave. It's saying, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. So we do have a piece of figurative language here. And this piece of figurative language is helping bring out the meaning of this stanza. So I have our hearts like muffled drums are beating. Okay, this is what we call a simile because we have the word like. Because we have the word like. Now remember, when we annotate figurative language, we have to do 3 things. Okay, and we use the acronym ICE to remember. We have to identify is number 1, classify is number 2, and explain is number 3. Okay, so we need to identify, which we did, we highlighted, and now we're going to come over here and we're going to write simile. And then now we're going to classify the simile. We're going to classify the simile as stating what is getting compared here. So simile, and then we're going to say number 2, it's comparing one's beating heart to that of a muffled drum. Okay, so it's comparing our hearts as humans and how our hearts beat as humans to that of a muffled drum. So what is the author trying to say here? So that's the third thing. The third thing we have to explain by the author using this figurative language, what is he trying to say? And so here it says, number 3, to say what? Or to show what? Well, let's think about what is a muffled drum? Okay, a muffled drum. Well, we're not dealing with a broken drum. Okay, we're dealing with a muffled drum. So I think the drum is still going to make a sound. We're just going to have to figure out what kind of sound. So if you've ever tried to scream out loud, it sounds very loud, but then try to scream when you have your hand over your mouth. The sound is going to be muffled. It's not going to be very strong. It's not going to be very powerful. It's going to be weak and softer and lessened. And so that's the connection, that's the comparison that the author wants us to make with the way that our heart beats. Okay, so as we get older, as we age, our heartbeat becomes more muffled. It becomes weaker. It slows down. It's not as strong. It's harder to hear. And why is that? Because we're getting closer to our funeral march to the grave, which this last line right here represents death. That last line right there represents death. So here we go. We have a simile. The simile is comparing one's beating heart to that of a muffled drum to say that life is long and time is ticking. And even though our hearts are willing, at some point, our hearts will be muffled. And that can mean weaken, that can mean slow down, and that can mean age. Okay, like, old age, growing older. And we become, excuse me, closer to death. So all of this is for the simile. There we go. So it's saying here, the life's journey is long and time is ticking away. And even though our hearts are determined and brave, at some point it's still going to be like a muffled drum. Our hearts are going to beat like a muffled drum as we get closer to our funeral march to the grave, or as we get closer to death. Okay, so this stanza is kind of bringing up, a little bit of a positive, but mostly a negative aspect. Okay, it's positive in that we have a heart that is determined and brave. Okay, so that line is definitely positive. Okay, but everything else is, and again, I guess the art is long. That could be positive too. But time is fleeting is negative. And then our hearts beating like muffled drums, that's kind of negative. And then definitely, us becoming closer to our death is negative. So the rest of the stanza would be negative. So the heart is kind of speaking and letting us know, like, hey, from one heart to another, life is long, time is not on our side. Even though our hearts are brave and determined, our hearts eventually end up slowing down as we get closer to our death. And then we go into stanza 5. It says, in the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. So again, we're starting off here and saying, in the world's broad field of battle. So the world is is a battle. Okay, the world is a battlefield. The world is broad, the world is big, but it's a battlefield out there. And in the bivouac of life. What's bivouac mean? Look at the footnote. Bivouac means a temporary camp without cover. And so that's how they're describing life. They're saying life is, a camp and you're not protected in it. There's no cover. And that is true for life. We're vulnerable in life. Okay, we're not always protected from everything that life brings at us. So these two lines are definitely, negative connotation, negative tone. And it's telling us that life is a battlefield and we are not protected. And then the heart is saying, be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. So think about, why is it telling us not to be like dumb driven cattle? Well, think about a life of a cow. Think of a life of a cattle. They get herded by the farmer. They get herded around from pasture to pasture. And then they spend their days basically, like eating grass and pooping, eating grass and pooping. They don't do much. Okay. They don't contribute a lot to anything. And so I think that's what the heart is saying. Like, don't allow somebody to kind of, control you and control where you go. And then don't like waste your life doing the same old thing or doing pretty much nothing. Instead, be the hero of your life. Okay. Be a hero in the strife. Now look at what strife is. Strife is angry, or bitter disagreement. Okay, so be the hero for yourself when things are not going according to plan. Or even also too, the strife could represent times in our lives where we do get mad and frustrated with somebody. We do disagree. But instead of being angry and bitter, like, we need to be the hero. We need to be the better person, and we need to learn to, let go and forgive. Okay, because yes, the world is a battlefield. Yes, we're not protected from things. We're gonna get hurt. Things are gonna happen, but don't let somebody control you. Don't let somebody, live your life and dictate your life. Don't be like that driven cow. Don't, waste your life. Be that hero in your life, even in the midst of hard times and disagreements. Be the better person. Forgive, forget, let it go, move on, and you be in charge of how you're going to feel. Because we all know that sometimes in life, if you carry around that unforgiveness, if you carry around, that anger, that bitterness and resentment, you'll start to turn into that. You'll start to live a life of, not your best life. You'll start to live not appreciating things, always mad, always seeing the negative. And so I think this stanza here, the heart is saying, like, don't be like that. Okay, so we're gonna write here, over here, we're gonna say, admit amidst the hard times life gives us, we need to be the heroes, and even we need to be the heroes, and even if we are angry, bitter, or have unforgiveness, we need to let it go and live. Okay, so also kind of saying, like, be the better person. Learn to have a life of forgiveness. Okay, that's kind of the message I'm getting from that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop here, and you're going to need to open up the second video, and you're going to need to watch the second video to finish this last stanza and to finish the last stanzas on the second page and go over the questions and everything. Okay, so make sure you have the annotation. Oops, there you go. Make sure you have the annotations up to this point, and then please watch the next part of the video in part 2.